It's Monday and it's time for pharmacy class, and guess what? I'm giving it to you. We're going to make soap together. Isn't that exciting? And we're gonna start with a super easy one and a super beneficial one. This soap is an old-fashioned bar of soap called pine tar soap. And pine tar soap has been known to help with poison ivy, poison sumac, poison oak. It's also been known to be a great helper with skin conditions like eczema and psoriasis. It is just the simplest bar of soap you can make that packs a powerful medicinal punch that is just great to have in your homestead, on your farm, this time of year moving forward. So before we begin, let's cover some basics about pine tar. What is pine tar? All right, it is when you take essentially a pine tree and cook it under pressure with lots of heat until it basically combusts into ashes and pine tar. So it's basically a byproduct of that process. Where do you get pine tar? This is what it looks like. This is the brand we use, and guess what? You're not gonna believe it. You can get pine tar, good quality pine tar, at your local feed store. If you don't know about a feed store, you could probably find it on Amazon as well. It is super thick, like molasses, and sticky, and it stretches, and it's dark brown, and it is, to be honest, a mess. Traditionally, how this is probably used the most in this day and age is for horse hoof repairs. But again, we're going to use it as a natural remedy today. So how does pine tar soap help alleviate things like a rash from poison ivy or poison oak? That is because the pine tar has special properties in it that neutralize the urushiol, which is in those poison plants. That's the urushiol is what's actually causing the skin reaction. So the pine tar is going to neutralize the urushiol. So let's get going. Traditionally, this soap is going to set super fast, so we're gonna work super quickly with it. Often, you don't even need an immersion stick blender for this. Just stirring it up by hand is enough to trace it and get it into molds. So something to note before we begin this recipe, line everything out that you're gonna need. Once everything's lined out, we're ready to go. This soap is going to also smell like a campfire. It is masculine. It is, some people will say maybe overwhelming. It's like a woody, smoky campfire. We're also going to add, because of that, some cedarwood to our soap and some lavender. You do not have to add these essential oils, that's totally up to you, but I just want to note, if you've never smelled pine tar before, to take note of that. Personally, I love the smell. All right, so let's get those ingredients lined up. I do not have my recipe memorized, so here it is here. The recipe that is on Instagram under our reels and that I'm going to be reading to you is for 1 loaf of soap. For the average family and soap maker, that is plenty. I'm going to give you that recipe. However, I'm going to be making a slightly larger batch than what I'm telling you. So go off of the recipe. Like I said, the recipe I'm telling you is 1 loaf. So we're going to start with our lye water first. The reason why this is going to get super hot, and we want that super hot lye solution to cool down to about room temperature, and that takes a while. And depending on how hot your house is this time of year, it can take longer than others. So we're going to get that lye solution mixed up right away so we can set it somewhere safely to the side for it to cool off while we have times to work with our fats and oils and pine tar to make the other half of it. So always, for me, I always do that part of my soap making first to allot plenty of time. Now, when you're working with lye, you do need to take precautionary measures. It is caustic, which means it can burn your skin. And also when it heats up, it's going to put off a lot of fumes that are not good for you. So you're going to want to make sure your face is covered, your eyes are covered, you're wearing protective gloves. You want to make sure the door's open if you can, plenty of airway, kids are out of the way. Just be so safe. I have been burned with lye before. It is not fun. It's not the end of the world, but it is highly irritating and takes a long time for that to neutralize. God forbid you get burned. Remember that vinegar is going to neutralize that burn, so keep some vinegar nearby that you can splash on yourself should that happen. So let's rattle off this ingredient list so you can check and see if you have everything or if there's something you need to get. For one soap loaf, which is about 8 to 10 bars of soap, you want to do 10 ounces of distilled water, 3.8 ounces of sodium hydroxide or lye, and 1 teaspoon of salt. The salt is going to help demold our soap easier. That is not something you have to include, but it is something nice to include. So that is the ingredients for our lye solution. The second part is going to be our fats and oils for the other half of the soap. And that is going to be 18 ounces of extra virgin olive oil. A note with extra virgin olive oil, as single sources you can find it is ideal. And if you need help finding an extra virgin olive oil that's fairly good quality here in the States, I suggest going to Costco, and Kirkland's has that available for you. You also want to do 7.5 ounces of coconut oil, organic, 1.5 ounces of castor oil, the palm of God, that oil is amazing, and 3 ounces of pine tar. Again, you can find that at your farm store, order it online at Amazon. And I'm also going to be scenting ours, like I had mentioned, with 0.75 ounces, we'll say, of cedarwood and 0.75 ounces of lavender. Again, the essential oils are completely optional. You can leave them out completely, or you can switch up the scent, be creative. So let's get started measuring out our ingredients. All right, I have my scale here, and I'm just measuring out my distilled water to start. And we're looking at 10 ounces for you all. There we are. And now we're going to add the 3.5 ounces of lye. But again, before I do that, let's put on some protective wear. And my glasses, I love Pit Viper. They have the cutest safety glasses. These are pink. They even have a cute shield on the side. And cover my face and put some gloves on, and then I'm going to gently pour, so gently pour the lye into this water. It's going to get super hot, so we want to watch our hands and our arms and kind of stand out to the side as we're mixing it in. And you'll probably see fumes rising. Again, you want lots of ventilation and making sure that fades. That will dissipate with time, and you want to stir your lye into your water until that water becomes clear. That is how you know that you have fully incorporated the lye into your water. And then again, we're going to set it to the side and keep an eye on that temperature. It's going to heat up over 100 degrees. We want to bring it down to around 80 if you can. All right, got my face covered. I'm gonna put gloves on. That is super important here. Thank you. All right, in goes our 3.8 ounces. There's 15.2. Again, I'm not standing right over this. I'm giving it some space because I want to try to avoid this as much as I possibly can. And now I'm going to add my tablespoon of salt. Again, not necessary, but this will help demold this soap specifically. And now we're just going to stir this, again, off to the side until this water turns clear. I'll see if I can show you here. See how murky and white it is? So we're gonna make sure it turns clear before we stop and set it to the side. All right, our water is just about clear, so I'm gonna move this over to start cooling down as I work on the next step. As you can see, it's a lot clearer now, so I'm gonna set it over here. Whew! All right, it is much clearer. It's gonna set to cool. To give you an idea of how hot that lye water currently is, it's 187 degrees, and that needs to come down like 100 degrees. So it needs to sit there for quite a while and just hang out. This is why sometimes soap making can be tricky to teach, because we don't know how long that's gonna take for it to get cool. But we'll see, we have all night. All right, so let's get ready to do the other part of our soap making, which is the fats, getting them measured out, heated up and cooled off as well. Because what our goal is our oil and fat needs to site, that's what they call it in soap making, needs to site with the lye solution. And siting basically means the temperatures need to match. So for example, if our lye is like 80 degrees, ideally our fats and lotions need to be heated and then cooled to 80 degrees too, before we blend the two together. And if your temperatures match and you have nice low temps, that soap will do what's called trace, which means thicken up. Like in a batter, you know, like as you mix your batter, you can kind of like put the spatula through the batter and a line kind of forms. That's called a trace. That's how you know your soap's ready. Your soap cannot be too hot, because if you try to force it and blend that soap together really hot, it's going to overflow and pour out of your soap molds. It's not going to set. You're just going to have a massive mess. So patience is a key to soap making. So let's go ahead and get the fats measured out, which we're looking at olive oil, castor oil, coconut oil. I feel like I'm leaving one out, but maybe that's it. That's the oils and fats we're using. Again, we're gonna heat it up and then cool it down to match our lye solution. All right, another thing to point out with soap making, you need to use stainless steel pots, not pot metal, not aluminum, not fake metal, or that's also going to cause an adverse reaction in your soap making and ruin your batch. So make sure you're using non-reactive pots, bowls to your lye and fat mixtures, so you don't go awry there in your soap making either. So we're gonna start with our organic coconut oil, 7.5 ounces, and I'm just pouring it into my pot that is on a scale so I can keep an eye on it as I go. I like to soften, again, depending on the time of year, I like to pre-soften or let this sit out in the heat so it's much easier to work with. Again, I'm making a slightly bigger batch. It's still not too big, but if this doesn't look like 7.5 ounces, that's because it's not. That's what you should be using if you're looking to make one loaf. I'm looking to make about 4 loaves in this batch. All right, we are there. Now let's add our olive oil. Olive oil is 18 ounces. In that goes. There's a lot of olive oil in my soap recipes. If you haven't caught on by now, I just love olive oil so much. A lot of times our soaps have an infused olive oil to start out with. And that is the basis of our skincare line. All right, that's done. And then we're going to end with some castor oil. 1.5 ounces of castor oil. Alrighty. And we're going to end with adding our pine tar to it. So let's get this buddy opened up and I'll show you how thick and uber gooey it is. This is just like a little paint can. It opens just like a paint can. So I'm just gonna go around the edge and lift that lip up. And you're gonna wanna add 3 ounces of pine tar to your soap here. Now look at this. It is messy. If you're not into messes, you're not gonna be into pine tar. So let's go ahead and add this to it. Maybe, watch, look at that. It is just thick and gummy. See that? And get a fork here to help it out a bit. Woo, buddy. So thick, so gooey, but so good for your skin. It's gonna be so worth it. After I make the soap, I'm gonna make a pine tar salve, and that is a great companion to go along with the soap. The soap is great to really alleviate conditions if you're battling some kind of rash. That is gonna be so great to wash with, and then following it up with a salve is gonna soothe it and numb it and be a more topical application that will be applied and kind of help remedy it immediately. All right, we got that all done. Now let's move on to getting this heated up just slightly so then we can cool it back down again. This is my little cooktop buddy. I'm sure you've seen it on Instagram. It's also linked in our Amazon store. This guy gets the job done. It keeps my stovetop free for my family, and I can work on different salves and balms and soaps kind of out here in my apothecary area and still be out of the way. Not only that, this heats things up quicker than what my stovetop does. So I always appreciate that too, but you gotta keep an eye on it because it'll go quick. So now, like I said, we are just going to heat this up, not on very high, just enough to melt everything together, and then we're gonna pull it off the heat and then let it cool, and we're going to then play the waiting game and checking our temp for our lye solution and then checking our temp for our oils. And we're gonna keep doing that until we're looking at around 80 to 90 degrees. So while this is heating up, and it literally is about done. It's been like 2 minutes. Actually, it is done. It's been 2 minutes and everything's melted down. That is so crazy. Let's turn that off because you do not want it to get too hot. The hotter you get it, just the longer it's gonna take you to finish your batch of soap. So while that's kind of staying and resting, I'm gonna clear off my space, get my scale out of here, put all my lotion or put all my oils away and kind of clean up so I can have a free space to pour my soap when it's time and blend it, and it's all safe and a great area to work in. Okay, so let's pull this completely off of the heat. And let's take some temps of where we're at right now. So we're about, I don't know, 5 minutes out from getting this heated up. And it's at 112 degrees. And our lye solution is at 140 degrees. So we're gonna just let everything sit and cool off and revisit here in about 10-15 minutes and see what our temps are then. All right, we're at 84 degrees here. And 86 degrees with our lye solution, which is a pretty close match. So I think it's time to blend the fat and lye together, and let's go ahead and make that pine tar soap. I think the best thing to do for this is we're gonna go ahead and take the camera and film from above so you can fully see what's going on. So here we go. All right, so there's my molds. This is what I call my fat or my oils with the pine tar in it, and it has been melted and then cooled from, like I said, the upper hundreds, like 180 down to about 85 degrees. Now with this mixture, we're going to add our lye water to that. And like I said, this lye water is now the same temperature as this mixture, and it's low temp, and that's what we're after. Be so careful when you do this step as to not splash up into your face or onto your skin. Now, with traditional soap making, this is when you would get your stick blender out and start immersion blending this mixture together. But this pine tar soap mixture traces, which again means comes together and blends pretty well. So we may be able to get it to trace just by giving it some stirring. We'll see, and if it doesn't here in a minute, we'll get the blender out and get it blended together. So when you're tracing soap the traditional way without a blender and stirring like this, making figure eights is the best way to blend and incorporate your lye and your oil mixture together. So I'm kind of sitting here just making figure eights, stirring pretty vigorously, and you can see how this mixture went from fluid to it's getting thicker as we go. And again, I'm looking for a trace, and a trace means as I drag my spatula through this batter, it will leave a line in it, just like with baking. So let's keep stirring and we'll check in just a minute. I'm starting to see a trace, and you can see how this soap batter is almost sitting on top when I lift my spatula up and drip it over. See how that is staying on top? And I can see where my spatula is cutting now. I know that this is going to continue to accelerate, which means get hot again and come together. So I, with time and experience, know that this is where I want this pine tar soap to be at, what I want it to look like. So this is now the moment where I'm going to add my essential oils if I want to. And an essential oil is going to not only provide a nice scent to it, it's also going to add an additional medicinal property. So I'm adding lavender and cedarwood. And another thing that we must note is sometimes, depending on the essential oil that you're using, it can also further accelerate the trace of your soap. So we need to be careful of that, to remember that sometimes adding your essential oils after your batter's cooled a bit can make it get thicker even quicker yet. And as you can see, that is what's happening here. So let's go ahead and incorporate this, and then we're going to get it poured off into our molds. And then we're going to do something called topping our soap, which is when you just add a decorative design across the top of the loaf. Now we're going to pour this off into our molds, and look at how thick this is already. So you want to work super quick when working with this pine tar soap. Like I said, it's no joke when I say it traces super fast. I'm going to have to just scoop it out into the mold the best I can here. See what I'm saying? This is very quick process. Got to move so fast with this pine soap, with this pine tar soap here. All right, now I'm just going to scrape the rest of this down into my last mold here. It smells so good. That cedarwood and pine tar together. Oh my goodness. All right, I'm gonna just finish this up, and when we come back, we're gonna top this soap up. All right, now I'm just cleaning up my workspace. And at this point, you have the option to do something called topping your soap. And that is when you add a design to the top of this. This looks so beautiful how it's set naturally. I don't think I'm going to top it, but in our Instagram reel, you can see me doing that at the end of it. Let's see, maybe we'll top one of them here. And that is just taking a spoon or a utensil and dragging it through your loaf and making a design on it like so. You can do all different things with it and make it look all sorts of cute. You can do all different designs with it. But again, this one's kind of already set, so I'm not gonna get the best looking design in it because I took too long because I was trying to film this for you all, and my soap just set too quick to make a beautiful top. This one, I guess it's not so bad looking, but it's not the best. So we're gonna just leave it naturally set and enjoy that because that is so beautiful. And that is it. We have our pine tar soap poured off into our loaves. Again, if you followed the recipe I gave you at hand, then you'll have one beautiful loaf of soap here. We're gonna go ahead and let this cure for about a day. Then you wanna demold it and cut it, and then let those cut blocks and bars of soap cure for 4 to 6 weeks. That concludes our first ever soap making class. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm looking forward to teaching a lot more soap making 101 with you here at the Wild Carrot Farmstead. Have an amazing day. Thank you.